Hi everybody, my name's Ashley, and my topic for the iSearch presentation is that a lack of student choice in texts or activities results in decreased class engagement. So my interest in this problem started in K through 12 when I was frustrated by readings that I was forced to read and had no personal connection with them, and I didn't want to think about the story because how could I analyze a story if I didn't even understand the story, because I couldn't relate to the setting or whatever the content was of the story. So that's where I thought about the importance of personal connection, that you need to connect to a story before you can even begin to think about it. And I noticed pedagogically, looking back in Dr. Spencer's literature and theology class, my first graduate class, that Dr. Spencer had us read 3 books. The first 2, Gilead by Marilyn Robinson and Lincoln in the Bardo by George Saunders, which pertain to our class topic, religious experience. Dr. Spencer modeled how to apply the critical thinking from the critical text we were reading onto the fiction text that we were reading. So by the time we had to read the 3rd book, we had to choose that one on our own, and we got to practice what Dr. Spencer had been modeling for us. So I noticed that kind of modeling and then letting us try type of teaching method in his class. So what I thought I already knew is that student choice is important, but I thought it was only limited to texts. But the TED Talk that we watched for this week's multimedia portion, I realized that the biology teacher that spoke in the TED Talk said that he had a menu of different activities for his students to do, which I thought was really fascinating. So then I realized that student choice is important not only for texts, but also in activities that students are engaged in the class. And I thought that student choice limited to only a reader response lens of critical thinking, but what I noticed in my class observation was that Dr. Salwak started with reader response type questions, but he did build upon personal interest and personal engagement towards critical thinking. So then what I thought I already knew, the third thing that I thought I already knew was that student choice and critical thinking needed to happen together. You can't have student choice in the classroom and not have critical thinking, or else you won't teach the kids anything. And you can't have critical thinking without student choice, because then the students won't want to learn anything. So what I wanted to find out was, how do you maintain critical thinking and student choice? What methods can you do to make sure that these both happen? I also wanted to ensure that student choice and Common Core standards could be met, and how to make that happen. And I also, because of my interest in rhetoric and composition, wanted to know what student choice is possible for writing activities based on readings. So my research procedure started out with articles about the literary canon, because that was my topic in the beginning, was expanding the literary canon. But these articles sort of brought me to the more educational aspect and teaching all levels. And within reading some of those articles, I read more about class engagement and personal engagement and affective and cognitive engagement, which I'll talk about in a minute. And so it brought me to articles in student engagement in literature. So basically what I found is that several scholars had realized that students really had dichotomized reading. So they divided it into reading that they did for school and then quote-unquote real reading that they did out of school. So as like in the pictures here, they had outside of school reading was fun, but reading for school was hard and overwhelming, and maybe there was no personal interest in it. So what the professors also noticed is that when there's a lack of personal connection, there can be a lack of engagement, and then there can be a lack of poor academic performance because of that. So because of this dichotomization, students and some professors were holding the assumption that critical thinking can only be applied to texts that are chosen in the school, that it can't be applied to texts chosen outside of school, like maybe Hunger Games or Twilight or Harry Potter or things like that. That critical thinking can't be applied to those because you don't read those in school. Those are fun texts that don't have deep literary themes in them. Further, 2 scholars were talking about affective and cognitive engagement. So affective engagement is sort of like, it's like personal engagement, emotional engagement, And it's sort of like building on lower level critical thinking skills in that it's knowledge meeting knowledge, lower order being on the lower portion of the pyramid of Bloom's taxonomy. So like knowledge meeting knowledge, as Langer says, we have to build on prior knowledge, that students bring certain knowledge when you have to make connections with what they know now in order to grow and build upon what they already know. So affective engagement, connecting with what they already know, personally, emotionally, academically, is a vital step for critical thinking. So you can't start critical thinking, you can't encourage critical thinking if students are not affectively or personally engaged. So this leaves the key question is, how do you bridge the gap between affective or lower order engagement and cognitive or higher order engagement? So the key that I discovered from several scholars had discovered was that modeling is pretty much the key for the classroom, so that teachers need to demonstrate critical thinking of certain texts in order for the students to sort of model that. So just like Dr. Spencer modeled critical thinking in terms of religious experience and religious critical texts onto the fiction books that we were reading, then he gave us the opportunity to practice for ourselves. So he demonstrated critical thinking, and then we personally chose our texts and modeled what he did. So essentially, active engagement is a necessary prerequisite for cognitive engagement. We cannot think critically about a text until we are affectively engaged, until we are personally engaged. Then we will want to not throw the book aside, but actually see what else are we missing, or what other deeper themes run through this, Hunger Games book or Harry Potter book. Second is that scaffolding. You need to scaffold upon affective engagement towards cognitive engagement. So this is where kind of the modeling comes in, is that teachers are guides. So you start out with, okay, everybody has their affective engagement. Now we're going to take these steps, or we're going to follow these instructions. You're going to have these guided questions toward more critical thinking skills, towards critical questions. And so this is the demonstration or the modeling that teachers or professors need to do, is demonstrate and show us, how do we think critically? Not only get students to think critically, but show them, this is how I think deeper about a text. Now you try. Okay. So in conclusion, 3 things that I kind of learned from this iSearch project is that there needs to be a balance between freedom of choice and critical thinking. That you can't have too much freedom of choice without any critical guidance, or else you won't learn anything. And if you have too much critical thinking without any freedom of choice, students won't be engaged. Therefore, personal connection is vital. Affective engagement is vital for cognitive engagement. You can have students read fun text all they want, but if you want them to learn and think critically, you have to start with the fun text, but build upon that. And therefore, teachers need to model critical thinking. So once you have made that personal connection, you can demonstrate, well, maybe, for example, though we're reading this book in class, when I read this book in high school or in my freshman composition class, or not freshman composition, freshman literature class, I was really fascinated by this one concept or this one event. So I looked up more about this running theme that was going through it, and then I just kept researching and reading and developed questions and talked to my professor about it. And that's how you build into deeper thinking, by following topics that you're passionate about, which I think is also in line with what this iSearch topic is, right? Or this iSearch presentation or paper, because we're following topics that we're passionate about, and then we're looking for critical questions about it. And that's really the key to any assignment or paper, is that if you are passionate about it, then you will want to learn more about it. So, so that's my iSearch project. Here's my Works Cited page, and thank you for watching.